One of the greatest stories in science isn't about some eureka moment. Nope. It's actually about a quiet betrayal. This is the story of how the book that literally moved the Earth was sabotaged on the very day it was born.
So, back in 1543, this book drops. It's called De Revolutionibus Orbium Coelestium, or On the Revolutions of the Heavenly Spheres, by Nicolaus Copernicus. This was the book that argued the Earth wasn't the center of everything, that we, in fact, revolve around the sun. I mean, talk about a universe-shattering idea.
But here's where it gets weird. The very first thing anyone would read, right at the beginning, was a preface with no name attached. And this little anonymous note, well, it seemed to basically torpedo the entire book, suggesting that all these revolutionary ideas weren't meant to be taken as, reality. So that's the big question for us today. Who would dare to mess with a text this important right as it was being printed? And what on earth was their motive? This is a genuine historical whodunit. And believe me, the story is even stranger than you think. Okay, so to get to the bottom of this, we've got to talk about the man himself, Nicolaus Copernicus. He was this brilliant Polish church official, a mathematician, an astronomer, and also, as it turns out, an incredibly cautious guy. And his idea? Man, it was radical. This wasn't some minor adjustment. We're talking a complete cosmic overhaul. He was saying things like, there's no single center to the universe. Earth isn't it. The sun is, or at least it's close. And all those weird backwards movements the planets seem to make, that's just because the Earth is moving too. Mind-blowing stuff for the 1500s. But get this, he sat on this world-changing idea for over 30 years. 30! He'd share it with a few friends, it was even talked about in Rome, but he just would not publish it. Why? Simple. He was scared. He was terrified of being ridiculed, and he was worried about backlash from the church. He knew he was challenging 1,000 years of accepted science and scripture. So, after 3 decades of silence, what changes? Well, it all comes down to 2 very different guys who step into the picture. And these 2 men are at the absolute heart of our mystery. All right, in this corner, you've got George Joachim Redicus. He's this young, energetic mathematician, a total fanboy who travels all the way to Poland just to learn from his hero. He's the champion, a true believer. And in the other corner, we have Andreas Osiander. He's a respected theologian in Nuremberg, where the book is going to be printed. He's the pragmatist, the cautious guardian, who's really worried about how this whole Earth moves thing is going to go over. So here's how the fateful handover goes down. Redicus, our champion, finally convinces the old, hesitant Copernicus to publish. Awesome. The manuscript gets sent off to the printer. But then, Redicus gets a great job offer in another city. He has to leave before the book is done. So who does he ask to look after the final stages? You guessed it. Andreas Osiander. The keys to the kingdom are now in the hands of the pragmatist. And this, right here, is where everything changes. Copernicus is hundreds of miles away. Reticulus is gone, and Osiander, well, Osiander decides to add his own little introduction to the book, an introduction he writes himself. And just listen to the heart of what he wrote. He says the ideas in the book don't need to be true nor even probable. He's basically telling the reader, hey, this is just a bunch of math. It's a useful tool for making calculations, but don't think for a second that this is how the universe actually works. He turned a work of physics into a mere convenient fiction. Now, to be fair to Osiander, this idea of saving the phenomena was pretty much standard operating procedure for astronomers back then. Most of them didn't think their complex models of cycles and epicycles were real. Their job was just to predict where the planets would be, not to describe actual reality. So Osiander was kind of playing by the old rules, but this was a brand new game. But here is the critical part, the deception. Osiander didn't sign his name. And by leaving it anonymous, he made it sound like Copernicus himself was saying, hey everyone, don't take this too seriously. But we know from Copernicus's own writing that he absolutely believed it was real. He believed the Earth truly moved. This wasn't just a preface, it was a misrepresentation of a man's life's work. So how did the people who knew the truth react? Oh, Redicus was livid. I mean, sources say he was absolutely furious. But what about Copernicus? This is the heartbreaking part of the story. The very first printed copy of his book was brought to him on his deathbed. He had suffered a massive stroke.
He got to see his life's work in his hands, but he never knew about the lie hidden on its first page. He died that same day.
So you'd think this act of sabotage would just kill the Copernican revolution right in the cradle, right? Well, not exactly. The story of how this idea actually caught on is way more complex, and in some ways, it's even more surprising.
Check out this number. It is just staggering. 60 years after this groundbreaking book was published, you could count the number of astronomers in all of Europe who actually believed it on like 2 or 3 hands. The revolution wasn't an explosion. It was a really, really slow burn. And here's the twist. Osiander's preface might have actually helped by making the book seem less threatening, allowing it to fly under the radar in those early decades.
So for half a century, the identity of the person who wrote that preface remained a mystery to almost everyone. The truth only came out when the great astronomer Johannes Kepler started digging around. He found the evidence, and he was the one who publicly called out Andreas Osiander, finally setting the record straight. And this leads us to a really fascinating paradox, doesn't it? Was what Osiander did an act of sabotage? Oh, for sure, 100%. But was it also, maybe unintentionally, the protective packaging that allowed this dangerous revolutionary idea to survive its infancy? It's a complicated legacy, to say the least. And that's really the thought I want to leave you with. We love to imagine these big scientific breakthroughs as clean, heroic moments. But the messy, all-too-human story of Copernicus's book shows us that progress is often complicated, driven by fear and compromise just as much as by courage. It's a reminder that sometimes the biggest revolutions begin not with a bang, but with a whisper and a lie.